Hey, welcome back to Drowning in Yarn. I'm Caleb. Today, I'm really excited to show you a conversation that I had with an up-and-coming designer, Matt Akers. He's the designer behind my latest finished object, the Fade Into You Shawl, and he walks me through that shawl, his new brioche cowl, and a million other beautiful patterns that he designed. He started designing almost a year ago now and has accomplished so much in such a short amount of time. It's a super interesting interview and he's a super fascinating person. If you're enjoying the interview while you're watching it, go ahead and leave a like on this video and let me know what you think in the comments down below. Hey Matt, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just, trying to stay warm. So, you're still in school, right?
Actually, just graduated. I applied to dental schools this fall, so now I'm kind of just in the waiting period.
That's awesome. What did you major in?
So I have a degree in biology with a pre-med concentration.
Did you start knitting for like dexterity or like what was the story there?
Yes, my grandmother taught me how to knit when I was 8. And I knit like a scarf I never finished. And then my sophomore year of college, my mom had broken her leg in the winter. So I was home on winter break, like watching a bunch of movies with her, and I wanted to do something with my hands. So I just started knitting again, and I just really liked it. And then I knit so many pairs of socks.
So you started knitting in your, well, seriously knitting in your sophomore year of college, and then you started designing like almost
But
immediately?
like a year-ish later, because I didn't actually know that like knitting patterns were a thing you could get. I found like one YouTube tutorial that taught how to like knit a sock,
Okay.
I think with heel flap and gusset. So I just knew how to do that and just followed like this one YouTube tutorial that I don't even remember what it was.
That's pretty impressive because I hear from so many people how scary they think socks are, and you
Yeah.
just started there.
I started there and I also started on DPNs, which is like now I never knit on DPNs, but like
Are
it was
you
a big
a magic
commitment.
looper?
Yeah, I really like Magic Loop just because I like this is the front, this is the back.
It's just like a natural divide.
Yeah, really easy to write patterns that way.
Was a sock your first pattern or?
Yeah, so my first pattern was a free sock pattern that I still have on my Ravelry. They used like some twisted stitch cables. And then I think it was April of 2020 was like when I really like felt very confident in like designing, and I had my I Smell Snow socks like are cabled and they have baubles in them. Was like the first like serious pattern that kind of follows like the same format as all my patterns do now.
And almost immediately after that, you came out with your Pride sock set?
Yeah, so I did like 2 sock designs that had I Smell Snow and Wonderland socks. And then COVID happened and I was home. I was planning on doing like this honeycomb kind of design, and I ordered what I thought was like a honey colored yarn. And I got this like bright banana yellow instead, and just kind of was like, well, I need to knit with it right now or I'll never knit with it because I
Right.
didn't particularly like it. And then I started knitting with it and really liked it. And then just kind of kept going and made 8 other patterns. That was a lot. I did that entire collection in about a month and a half, knitting all the samples and writing everything to get it to a tech editor to be able to have it ready for June.
I can hardly knit a pair of socks in that amount of time, so that's incredibly impressive.
And I was also like full time in like organic chemistry and biochem at that point, but everything had moved to online, so I had a little bit more free time. But I was averaging about 2 pairs of socks a week, and then like Saturday, I would like start on the next designs.
Now, are you like a person who's always this productive, or was this just like a burst of creativity?
I think I normally like have really big waves of creativity. So like I think from April to probably like August, I had knit and designed pretty much everything that came out in 2020. So like all those samples and stuff had all been made because then I started school and then had patterns come out like each month. I tend to do it all at once and kind of save it and like spread it out a little bit more.
That makes sense. So then you have like a steady stream.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through like your design process? I know, like you said, with the socks, it's sort of the impetus was this like unexpected skein of yarn. Is it
Yeah.
always yarn, or do you get an idea, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I have all my samples like with me right now. So I did like all these nice rainbow
Wow.
socks. So this is Off the Beaten Path. So it's a cable and then it's reverse stockinette, but it's actually knit inside out. So you don't have to, you purl like 4 stitches in the sock.
Is it harder to knit the cable inside out than it is?
It's it's not as hard as you would think
Okay.
because it's a pretty easy cable, but I personally think this is like one of the coolest designs I've done just
It's
in
really
like
cool. So what are the other names of the Pride socks? There are 6?
there's 8. So it's designed after the original Pride flag, which was 8 colors. And
Okay.
then when they mass produced it, they cut it down to 6 because they don't make pink or turquoise. So this is Love Wins, and it has a little heart cable. Then Ruby Slippers, which is also reverse stockinette and has like a little bow, kind of like Dorothy's Ruby
I'm
Slippers.
gonna say that's a Dorothy shout out.
Yeah. Yellow is something like Sunshine Socks, which is just purl stitches and super fun. This is probably the most complicated cabled sock I have. It is Walking in Nature, and it's this really pretty slanted cable with a lot of texture. Uh, Elder One socks and Diamond in the Rough socks. It's
Yeah,
a lacy diamond pattern. And After the Storm socks,
they're all so pretty.
which is just like a pretty, like, I think it's called fishtail lace.
So
It's
there's
always
like a
hard to
lot of
photograph.
fun techniques in there. And does it come as a PDF, like a book, or do you buy it?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can get all 8 patterns for $20 as an ebook on my Ravelry store. Or if you just like one of them, they're all available as separate purchases.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then kind of was just like on a rainbow kick and had a mini skein set of rainbow stuff and made this shawl, which is called the Counting Rainbow Shawl.
Garter and brioche.
Yeah, so this is Brioche.
Okay.
And this is kind of the foray to the Fade Into You shawl, because for this I had mini skeins and I didn't want to knit all of this garter and then find out I didn't have enough in the mini skein. So I started this one at the bottom as well and worked this way, like the construction of the Fade Into You shawl.
Right. Okay.
And then looking at this, I was like, oh, I really like this. And then Sweet Georgia had come out with their Fade mini skein sets. And that was kind of then morphed into this with like a similar construction, but just like different brioche stuff. So
It's gorgeous.
yeah.
Both gorgeous.
So kind of just as you design things, I really just continuously find inspiration. And like in the middle of one project, I'm always like, oh, well, this would be super cool. And then kind of make a plan for that later.
Was like your idea with this to do the brioche, or did the brioche idea kind of come towards the end of that rainbow shawl?
I learned how to brioche in 2020 in February because I live in Maine, and Andrea Mowry was teaching a brioche class at a local yarn shop about like an hour or 2 away from me. So I was like, I have to take that.
Yeah.
And just kind of went with it. And I really fell in love with brioche. It's such a fun texture. It's so squishy. I'm a very tactile person, so I just like being able to squish things, which is
Right.
one of the reasons I like yarn so much.
So you learned brioche from Andrea Mowry herself.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
that's
cool.
a really cool experience. She's probably the nicest person I've ever met.
Really, that
Yeah.
makes me happy. I always like to hear that somebody that I love is also, a nice, good
Yeah.
person. So I'm just going to transition into showing you my Fade Into shawl
Yes.
because I'm so excited about it, and you just showed yours, and here it
Oh,
is.
I love it. It's so pretty.
Thank you so much. So I have a couple things that I love about it. One is that I love that it starts at the widest point. It's like you have all this cast on energy, and like this shawl makes really good use of that because
Yes.
as you kind of get into like the project fatigue,
Mhm.
it's like, this wide
Yeah.
versus like being suddenly hundreds of stitches, and you're like, well, damn, these rows are taking me 30 minutes. And then the other thing was I just really love that it makes such good use of mini skeins.
I really like how tonal yours is, especially with like the neutral background. But
I thought I was as I was knitting it, I kept telling my boyfriend that I was really concerned about it because I don't wear these colors. To me are like loud and bright, which I know to other people they're like, what? but I was so worried about it, but
Well,
I just
that's the
had to
like
get it.
amazing thing about brioche is you can also have like the more muted side when you flip it over.
Yes.
And being garter, it's completely reversible, which I really love about it.
The knitwear that I wear all the time is what I have right by the door that I throw
Yeah.
on to walk the dogs, especially in 2020. I don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I am like very fashionable from the neck up with my handmade garments and
Yeah.
then in sweats, you know, from the
Yeah.
neck down. But this has been living by my door because it is so warm and beautiful. And I agree that the reversible nature of it, like I can be a little bit crazier or a little bit more subdued, and it just
Yeah.
works so well.
Yeah. And I really like the size of this shawl. Like I think I made this sample in about a week. Yeah, just because like it's not a huge shawl. Shawls can normally get like huge and kind of outrageous size.
Yeah.
So this was kind of like just a nice size, like fit under your coat, like not really have to worry about anything.
I think especially for a guy, a shawl, like before you knit your first shawl, you're like, I'm not like a church lady. Like, why do I need a shawl? You know? But then you knit one and it really, they work the best with like coats because it's
Mhm.
just like keeps this part warm without creating
Yeah,
all the bulk down below, like a scarf if you tuck it in. Something like this just fits so well in the jacket while still giving you enough to keep you warm in your
yeah,
neck. We're talking about like keeping your neck warm in brioche. And I know today was a big day for you.
yeah. So I just released this double wrap cowl,
And
which
you learned to knit brioche last year?
yeah. So
That's
it hasn't even been a year actually. February. So next month it'll
wow,
be a year. But this cowl is one of my favorite. It's
gorgeous.
just so cool and so graphic. It's called the Curious Labyrinth cowl.
Can you
And
walk me through like your design? Like what was the spark for this pattern?
so this one was actually the yarn. So
Okay.
I did a hat, the Flock Together hat,
Mhm.
earlier in 2020 with Aves Fiberworks. And she is such a talented dyer. Like these colors are just so pretty. And this
Yeah.
is part of her, all her yarns inspired by birds.
Okay.
So this is part of her toucan collection. Green, something I can never pronounce, toucan, and then her raven colorway, which is the black. I just thought this would be like such a fun graphic brioche design. And I really like Alice in Wonderland. It was one of my favorite movies growing up. So I have like the Wonderland socks.
Mhm.
And then this is the Curious Labyrinth is the like hedge maze in front of the Queen of
Okay.
Hearts castle. And I thought this kind of like looked kind of hedge mazy. And then the green is actually fingering weight yarn and a mohair held together. So it's super warm, super cozy.
So is the black DK weight?
Yeah, the black is DK. So I really like the mixing of like a fingering weight held together with a DK. It's just a lot of fun.
I agree and I love it because I feel like it gives you a better chance of like I have something in my stash. It's not all
Yeah.
because I never buy worsted weight yarn. I'm such like a fingering weight
Yeah.
impulse buyer. So whenever I see projects that use fingering weight in with something else and like let me make something other than socks.
I love fingering weight because it's so versatile because you can always make it thicker. In spinning, there's like a Navajo like chain ply where you kind of do like a giant crochet chain. And you can do that to like hold fingering weight triple. And then that's basically worsted weight. It's just so versatile. And also like the yardage is just so much better in fingering weight. So I'm a big fan of that.
I same. I would say that this Fade Into You shawl is like beginner. And I know you have brioche tutorials, right?
Yeah, so I
Um,
actually have my little swatch. So I have a video that actually teaches you from cast on to cast off how to make this swatch.
oh
And
no.
this is like the perfect way to learn brioche because it's a swatch. It doesn't matter. You can rip it out. You can make mistakes. And that also comes with written instructions that you can download for free on my Ravelry page.
Then you have a coaster. It's a nice little
Yeah.
project too.
Yeah, I actually hang this on my bulletin board just because it looks nice.
Yeah, it does.
And then for the Curious Labyrinth cowl, so that uses a left leaning and right leaning brioche decrease, and also just a brioche knit yarn over brioche knit as an increase. So I made a bunch of tutorials actually yesterday that I found.
Sorry. She's nuts. Molly. Okay, sorry.
No problem. So all of the brioche skills, and pretty much any of my patterns all have videos to show you how to do that technique.
That's awesome. So Fade Into You is definitely beginner. What level do you think? I mean, obviously not, I'm not talking about a person like you because you're like, you learn very quickly in gathering, but like how advanced in brioche should somebody be before they tackle the labyrinth cowl? Is it like intermediate, advanced?
I would honestly say it's like the next step. So this is in the round, which is I think easier,
Yeah.
just because you don't have to slide back. This is just two decreases and one increase. Brioche is really cool in how structured it is, that it looks super complicated when it really isn't.
Right.
Um, it's just learning what all the different strands mean. Brioche is a completely different language than what we're used to as knitters. So I think just taking your time, and honestly, like this little swatch, like is just two repeats of it
Oh.
this way and then done once up, and it's the perfect way to just learn and practice.
Do you recommend to people using lifelines in between repeats if they're not comfortable fixing?
Yes, I would definitely recommend that because brioche is hard to fix. There's a lot
Yeah.
of strands. Once you get, because I've seen your videos and how to fix it and stuff, and like that's the same way I do it, but it's hard at first to
Yeah.
get comfortable with it.
I am very comfortable with like this, right? Just like basic brioche
Yeah.
ribbing. This to me, I would gladly drop a stitch just to fix something way down and then fix it. But if I was doing that labyrinth cowl, I would use a lifeline because I'm not like if I dropped a stitch where there was a repeat somewhere below it,
Mhm.
I would just put it down and come back to it a couple days later after I like gather myself because I'd be so freaked out, you know?
Yeah. And I actually I forget where I saw this, but my favorite way to put lifelines in, I have the Chow interchangeable set, like the little hole where the key goes in. If you take like a small needle, you can use dental floss
Okay.
and pull it through that and then just knit. And by the time you get to the end of the row, your lifeline's put in. And then just like tie it as a knot. I really like that just because it's super easy and you don't have to like sit and like go all the way around with a needle.
Which is more stressful, I think, if you're not comfortable with brioche, just because
Yeah,
there's
because you're
more strands that aren't just
yeah.
like traditional stitches, you know?
Yeah. So we talked about how with this shawl, the Fade Into You shawl, we're starting at the widest point with a I-cord cast on. It can be a lot to cast on.
Yeah.
So this is like 250 some odd stitches to cast on. I was not about to do an I-cord cast on for all of it. So I actually used a long tail cast on for this,
Okay.
knit the entire cowl, bound off, and then did an applied I-cord edging around it once
On
it was
both
finished.
sides?
Yeah, on both sides,
Okay.
which is like the cheater's way of doing it, but can also be applied to doing this. If the I chord seems like something you don't feel like doing at first, could always just cast on and then pick it up later.
So I did not think of doing that. And I will not lie to you, I'm pretty sure it took me as long to do the cast on as it did to do the first brioche stripe.
Yeah,
I was like sitting watching the news. I haven't had watched anything but CNN, you know, in like
yeah,
weeks. And so I was just watching the news, doing my I-cord cast on. But I think I'm glad that I did it and didn't come back and do an applied I-cord because when I was done, like we talked about, like I had
yeah,
3 stitches, you know, or how 7 stitches, and I was
yeah.
done.
It's
Um,
like doing your sleeves first and then knitting the body of a sweater because then you're like, it's done. It's so nice.
See, I am not that person. I do not like doing the sleeves first. I
I
just
really
get
like
so
doing
bored.
the sleeves first because then when I try it on, I know how it's like gonna lay when it's done. Because it always like the arms always change. Like it brings stuff up like a little bit, at
Okay.
least for me.
So now we're talking about sweaters, and it reminds me that you're like a prolific test knitter, I feel like.
I test a lot for Andrea Mowry just
Okay.
because like I really like her. I love her
Yeah, because I've
design.
seen your, I want to say
I did the stripes
stripes.
and I did the spice cardigan.
Okay.
I did that this summer. I also test knit the unbearable sweater for Max and Vincent
Okay.
this summer. And then I knit the woolen honey sweater, the throw over, and the pink velvet.
When do you have the time?
I just kind of knit all the time. Like I can read and knit at the same time really easily. So I do school and stuff. Like I spent the entire summer studying for my like entrance exams for dental school, and I just was knitting the entire time because that helps me stay focused a lot better. So I really like sweater bodies, just round and round and round. So I just would always have like on the weekend I'd cast on a sweater, so I'd have something to work on during the week. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have any tips for reading and knitting? Because during like these COVID times, I haven't read anything. I read 60 books a year before, and I have not finished a single book since March.
I have one of those like cookbook stands
Okay.
that I set up on my desk and just flip pages so I can knit socks and sweaters pretty easily with that. Anything that has a pattern, I can't read at the same time. So then I normally listen to a book. But yeah, I don't really watch much. Like I don't really watch things when I'm knitting. I'm more listening or reading.
That's a great use of your time, though.
Yeah.
Better
But I
than
also really like reading. I do read like, I think 2020 was like the least amount of books I've read. It was like 40 something, but normally I read around like 60 to 65 books.
what your favorite recent book.
Favorite recent book. I just read Red, White, and Royal Blue and really loved that.
I read that.
Yeah, it was really good. I really liked it. It was very, they were happy in the end, which I really liked.
Yeah.
And my favorite book of all time is either Little Fires Everywhere, which is just came out as a Hulu series last year. It's amazing. Or Where Did You Go, Bernadette? That one is really fun. I love how neurotic she is as a main character. And I love that she knits all the time when she's like thinking. It's like she just has a backpack and is like knitting away at things. It's so funny.
I read it before I started knitting, and I totally
Yeah.
forgot that she does do that.
Yeah. It's so
Um,
she's a really relatable character.
okay, yeah, I need to rewatch. Well, I need to watch the movie because I think Kate Blanchett's in it, but I also should reread
Yeah.
the book.
The movie's pretty good. It's pretty accurate to the book for like what they can fit in that time period.
Do you have a favorite like knitting book, like instructional book or pattern book?
I really love I have so many knitting books because I get them for like source books to do stitch patterns, but most of like the inspiration for a lot of my sock designs have come from this book. I got it from Amazon. I
Okay.
love like just sitting and flipping through it. There's every time I go through it, I find a new like stitch pattern I fall in love with. Because it has cables, lace, color work, just like all kinds of good information in it.
Okay, I'm gonna add that to my Amazon cart. I actually have two knitting books on the way today, and then two more coming from Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, my for Christmas, my boyfriend got me some knitting books, and he did a really good job. They're really fun books. One was like tucked stitches, which I've never done before, which I'm really interested.
And does your
But
boyfriend knit, or did he just like?
I've tried to teach him multiple times. It's just he did really well for like 5 rows, and then kind of was like, this isn't fun.
Do you have anything else coming up knitting wise that we should know about before I let you go?
I have some patterns, like I have like 5 designs that need to be written up right now that are just like notes in my notebook and like samples that are made.
Okay.
But I do aim to like release one pattern a month. It's
Okay.
kind of what I like set as an arbitrary goal for myself.
So we shouldn't have to wait too long, right?
Yeah, so follow me on Instagram, Makers Knitting, which funny story about that, I actually didn't realize that spelled Makers when I made it because my name is Matt Akers. So I just took my first initial and last name because that in like high school, that was always what my email was.
Uh,
As because I didn't make an Instagram to like have a following or anything. It was just to like keep track of my projects. I didn't know Ravelry was a thing. And it worked out really well.
it's a built-in brand.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so impressed with what you've accomplished in not even a year.
Yeah, it's
Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me and for designing such gorgeous things. One of my new favorite things.
yeah, it was really great to talk. I love getting to talk about knitting.
Me too. And it's been so hard in these COVID times. So it's nice to catch up
Yeah,
with people online.
definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great.
See you later.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Matt Akers, and you head over to his Ravelry page and check out all of his beautiful designs. He's an awesome person, he's an awesome designer, and he's only just begun, so I cannot wait to see what he comes up with in the future. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like down below, subscribe if you haven't already and you want to see more knitting related content, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, enjoy your knitting.